Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson and I'll be your host once again. And as always, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Very well, and I hope you all are as well. Another week in Belgian football and a weekend full of surprises.
Well, I could feel a bit better for a multitude of reasons, but I guess one of them probably will get touched on this episode.
Yeah, I think it might just. Let's quickly go through the scores and then we'll dive into what's been an eventful weekend, safe to say, as things kind of come to the final of the regular season. Charleroi, they got the first of those three of those 6 points that Felice Mazu thinks they need. They beat Westerlo 1-0 on Friday evening. Cercle Bruges and Mechelen played out an entertaining 3-2 win for Mechelen. Leuven, they lost at home 2-0 to Union. Standard Liège got a much needed win. They beat Ghent by 4-2. Club Brugge beat Genk, what Joris was kind of alluding to, by 3-0. Antwerp beat St. Truiden by the same scoreline at home. Anderlecht beat Eupen only 1-0, probably could have been a lot more. And then Kortrijk beat RWD Molenbeek 3-2 to keep their season alive. Let's start with Charleroi against Westerlo. As we've been saying, Mazu's been talking about the magic 6 points. They got 3 of them in what has felt like their most kind of likely chance of getting at least 3 of them when you kind of look at their schedule. Wasn't the best performance from Charleroi, wasn't full of attacking verve or anything like that. Westerlo had a lot more of the ball. They had a lot more of the chances, but Charleroi made it count when they needed to, and that was thanks to Parfait Guéjon. Came off the bench just after an hour, and he got the goal. It was a really nice move actually down the right-hand side from Charleroi. Jeremy Petrice, who Scott, I know you talked about last weekend, you were quite impressed with, and his ball in was smashed home by Guéjon, who, he's now the side's top scorer with 5 goals. So maybe they heard us last week saying Elamari Icha being top scorer with 4 is not a great look. So he decided to go grab himself one. Arguably been easily probably their signing of the best signing of the season, hasn't he? Doesn't really say much in terms of how not great their signings have been, but he's probably been the most effective out of the lot. Finished 1-0, much to the delight of Charleroi. Herve Coffey made a couple of decent saves, a couple of slightly weird looking saves, but they were effective. I guess you could say one with his feet across the line, which kept them ahead. And they definitely needed him to do that. It gives them a massive lifeline. For Westerlo, there's kind of chance to guarantee safety sort of slipped through their fingers with this one, but I still feel like, but even based on this performance, you feel like within the next 2 weeks they probably will get a point or 3 points that they just need. I think a point should probably do it for them, but 3 points would be nice. But massive win for the Zebras, which came at a time where they really, really did need it.
Yeah, you could almost feel the relief, actually. It was palpable. Ben mentioned Jeremy Petrice, who is in my notes, I think, possibly for the 3rd week running, never mind the 2nd. So a hat-trick of mentions from me, another decent game. And actually, he's been one of their standout players, and there haven't been too many to kind of shout about. I thought Jonas Bajer had a decent game this weekend as well. The Zebras' first win in 6 and their first goal in 4. And a pretty valuable one at that as well. I think Ben's right. I think another point will probably do it now. They would have to be very, very unlucky for that not to be the case. They've got Cercle at home and Ghent away before the end of the regular season, so they'll be looking for that there. Felice will be delighted if it turns out to be 4 points rather than 6 that get the job done. Because that means he was overreaching slightly. On a Westerlo point of view, I thought they were still missing Romeo Vermaat a little bit. I think he just misses dynamism. We know he's been really good since he came in, but he just offers them something slightly different, and they just look a slightly better side when he's there, partly because of what I mentioned 3 or 4 weeks ago about his defensive work rate. He likes to come back and kind of pitch in, and that, I think, is a really big motivating factor for other players in the side as well. But massive win for the Zebras, which just about just about secures them. She'd emphasise that, and they will just be desperate for the season to end, as I've been saying for ages. Wipe the slate clean and start again, because they have got a massive job ahead of them in the summer.
Why was that Westerlo goal disallowed, though? That's still a mystery, and that could have turned both teams' fates and how we would be talking about them in this episode for as well, of course. Yeah, Westerlo still, not completely free from worries themselves because of this result. That 1 point, especially that it would also take 2 from Charleroi, would have really have made a massive difference. Of course, you can't compare it like that. It was still in the first half, but nonetheless. Also, too bad that shot from, was it Bayram, hits the crossbar in injury time as well, because that would have been probably at least the goal of the year from a defender. I guess that was a real striker's move. Felt that deserved better. But and Westerlo still have to play against a definitely in form Mechelen, and a bit less in form, but still fighting for something as well, Genk. So they might have to rely on other teams, to not be in trouble. I personally also don't think they would be. If like you guys were already talking about, Charleroi probably only need 1 point. Well, Westerlo have that 1 point advantage over them still, so I guess both teams most likely will be safe from here. Yeah, Charleroi scoring with their first shot on target as well. And that way also finally getting their first away win in 11 months, so from the season, but also but that was then at the back end of last season, that last away win that they had. That just in time. They still only got 7 points away from home though, but it looks like that might not matter that much after all.
Yeah, I think it would take something remarkable from Leuven, I think, which we'll kind of allude to, I guess, later on, for these two sides not to stay up. And I think, like you said, I think they've both got at least one game within there that they probably could at least eke out a point that they need. So, yeah, I thought it was going to be squeaky bum time all the way to the end of the season for every side. But this weekend's kind of changed things around a little bit in terms of some teams kind of dropping out and stuff like that. Let's go to the other end of the table, the race for the top 6. We've been speaking about this game, I think, for a couple of weeks, haven't we? It's kind of the one for Mechelen again, away to Cercle Bruges, where it was kind of their chance to really kind of nail down their kind of chance of going into the top 6 and kind of being in the conversation for the kind of final couple of games. Didn't get off to the greatest of starts. The weather was terrible to begin with, for sure. And then Varlason, he's just made this weird habit of getting assists. Although some of them are like quite generous. Like the long balls over the top for this one, I get. But the one where he just saved it and it went straight to Minder, that's just not an assist. Like, let's be honest. He didn't mean for that to happen. This one he did mean for Minder. Just launched it over the top. Mechelen's defence it's like they've never seen a long ball before. Just completely at 6s and 7s. Minder gets through onto it. He's absolutely rapid. So anything that's kind of going in behind, he's going to have a chance. He tucks it past Gaetan Koop to make it 1-0. Mechelen do respond just before half time, though, and it kind of triggers this ridiculous couple of minutes. I think it's like a 5-minute kind of minutes of madness, basically. Kenan Rabti scores. Jeffrey Heremans with the kind of header back across goal, and Rabti puts it in to make it 1-1. Lovely finish from him, actually. Like nothing Varlason could do about that. Cercle then do get back into it, do then go back ahead. I think it's a free kick from Le Marchal is headed back across and eventually headed in by Augusto. Obviously no Kevin Denke, so I think really nice for Cercle to see a striker put the ball in the back of the net with him not there. The lead lasted a minute, 2 minutes at that. And Rabti this time turned provider. Heremans with a nice header back across Varlason to make it 2-2 at the break. Lots of chances in the second half, actually, for both sides. Mechelen looking really dangerous on the counter. They had what looked like the best chance in the second half. Skoos with a really nice kind of pulling out wide, driving in. His ball to Slimani was so good. I think it took Slimani by surprise. And I think a match fit Slimani does a lot better there than he did, but he's just kind of like really weak effort that Varlason saves quite easily. Skoos then did turn provider for the eventual winner. Bilal Bafdili coming off the bench again to score. Lovely ball across from Skoos. Varlason makes the save this time, but it falls straight back to Bafdili. There's nothing the goalkeeper can do about it on the second attempt. Goes into the back of the net to make it 3-2. And yeah, you could just see what it meant to Mechelen, and you could just feel that momentum shift because it brings them within just 1 point of Cercle Bruges. And after some of the results this weekend, it's between like those sides that you're looking at, Cercle, Mechelen, and then there's two sides in between them that are kind of fighting to get in there as well. So this is definitely going to be a race that goes down to the wire. And it was a really enjoyable game to watch. Quite enjoyed it. Quite enjoyed the rain. The weather made it quite a fun one to watch. And it's just, two sides really going for it, trying to kind of secure that top 6 position.
Yeah, some classic Northern European weather in the Venice of the North. It's funny Ben mentioning the rain because it's one of the first things I noted that it was pretty miserable in Bruges on the day. But Mechelen, very, very impressive, actually. I'm not sure whether this is as impressive as the win at the Bostel a few weeks ago based on kind of Antwerp's home form, but this is still a really, really good result. And I felt in the opening stages of this game, the first 15 to 20 minutes, Mechelen were really struggling to kind of cope with Cercle's press, as a lot of sides do in the opening stages of games. And I thought they're going to be in for a long afternoon here, but they dug in. And have dug out ultimately a fantastic result. They probably weren't the better side over the course of it, but they did have the better chances. And the thing is, they're now taking the chances that they create, and that is something that's changed. And again, this comes back to Besnik Haze and that winter training camp where they all got together. And Rob Scoose has been talking about this over the last couple of weeks. Them getting together and just talking about tweaking the system a bit, being more pragmatic ultimately, and Ben talking about them being really effective on the counter is something we've seen for a few weeks now. This is definitely a change that they've made as a group. They've looked at their strengths and realised that there's games, a bit like this one, where they're not going to see the majority of the ball, so they have to use it well, and that's something that they really have changed and improved in their game. They've upped their efficiency, and they're taking sometimes the few chances that they have in games. Heremans and Marabti were really good this weekend. Big players for them, players that they need to be performing. Slimani's improving, I think, all the time. Perhaps they're not quite playing to his strengths quite yet, as Besnik Haze alluded to recently as well. So I think they're going to be looking for a little bit more in the remaining weeks of the season there. Mechelen 6 wins and 2 draws in their last 8. One of the informed sides at the moment, and Besnik Haze's not satisfied yet. He wants a playoff 1 spot, and he came out and said that as well over the last few days. So he's obviously thrown down a challenge to his players to go and try and secure that. When you look at their 2 remaining fixtures, they've got Westerlo at home and Leuven away, both winnable from their point of view as well. So they will fancy their chances, but I think they probably will have to win both of them if they are going to do it, and then rely on a little bit of luck elsewhere. Cercle, despite playing pretty well, didn't actually create that much. That's their first defeat in 6. I don't think they'll be too downbeat about that because they've still got that playoff 1 spot in their own hands, really. They've got Charleroi away and Molenbeek at home, and they will think that if they can win both of those, or maybe even get 4 points, that could well be enough for them. Ben mentioned Alan Minda, brilliant this weekend. He's in a right good run of form at the moment. I've liked Alan Minda since the moment I set eyes on him. He's got pace and power, all of the tools to do well in the Belgian game, and he's becoming really important to Cercle, and I think quite a good player to watch. Big weekend for Mechelen, and yeah, from my own selfish point of view, more of that, please.
Yes, and well, on Mechelen, yeah, Scott already mentioned the stats of the games that they are unbeaten now, but also that includes games like this one against Cercle, the one against Antwerp. They also had Genk and Anderlecht in that spell of games, so it was not that it also was an easy schedule or anything. Part of the schedule there. Well, not only, at least, I guess. I don't know the whole schedule. Probably there were a few that were a bit easier, but nonetheless, to stay unbeaten in that streak, very impressive indeed. Yeah, and Mechelen, I feel like they somehow did not play out their counters too well, actually, in the second half. There were a few chances that they really should have done better. Well, chances where they didn't get to the chance, I guess. the last ball or the decision making a bit earlier, even not going well. But eventually it did work, albeit even there in 2 times, of course. But Bavdili scoring twice now in the past two weeks. That's also good for him for sure. That really, getting his feet in the league, onto his feet in the league. And on Cercle, 13 goals on set pieces, I've noticed. So that's about 1/3 of their goals. Just about. Like, I think they have 40 goals. So 39 would be exactly 1/3. Slightly less. And also worth mentioning, of course, that Warleson also is almost there, joint top assist giver now, only one behind. There are a few players there that have 4 assists, but he now joins the group behind with 3. They divide them really well. So it's interesting to see if he will actually be their main assist giver by the end of the season. Of course, I'm sure internally they will have some fun with that as well. Everyone should be happy, I guess, since it's an assist, so everyone gets a profit. And I feel like, for me at least, even though they were dominating, I guess, indeed, after the first hour still, but indeed there's no real threat there, and I feel like still and that's not completely a surprise with their playing style. But after minute 60, maybe 70, sometimes, don't pin it down on Richie a minute, but by the end of the game, it's clear that their levels are dropping. At least for me, it's quite. I feel like it's quite apparent. Because of their playing style, I guess it's difficult to sustain that for the whole 90 minutes. But I feel like indeed there's quite significant drop off. In at least performance level, I do not know if that also is the case in the points dropped. In this case, yes, but that's just cherry picking, of course. But their level of play is dropping after the longer the game goes on. So that's something that's is showing a bit more now towards the end of the season, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I think obviously they would love to have Denki back soon as well, and then I think they need to get Sommers back as well. I think he could have played, but I think it just came a little bit too early. And then obviously I think Van der Buggen's really important in there as well. I think if you just look at how young some of the other players are in those sort of positions and stuff, I think those guys with a little bit more kind of know-how of the league and can kind of especially I feel like someone like Sommers, he can kind of maintain a level. Like, he's a very kind of you look at him, you think this guy just looks like an athlete. Do you know what I mean? He's just got that kind of athlete vibe about him. Mechelen, yes, Scott, I think you were going to mention it, but obviously Bill Antonio doing his cruciate is just horrific. He's been so good for them. So that's 6 to 9 months, I think they reported it as being. So Patrick Fleet will probably come in. But I think as well, just kind of looking at, I just love the ability they have now within those kind of last couple of minutes to chuck. Like, Bilal Bafdidi's got it. He's kind of brings that energy and stuff, but then he can just chuck Nicola Storm on as well. And he doesn't have to maintain a level for the whole game that he just can't do at the moment. But he can just come on and inject that little bit of extra quality out wide and kind of tired legs and stuff like that. So I think that is going to make a difference for them kind of in the next couple of games. Just being able to, as he's got now, he can turn to the bench and he can say, I've got Nicola Storm. If we're chasing the game, I can just at least chuck him on. Things are definitely looking good for Mechelen. I think the Pro League and Opta released kind of a percentage chance of making playoffs and stuff. And after this game, Mechelen, they've got only a 31% chance of making the top 6, which I feel like it's not taking into account momentum and form and stuff like that. I think it key takes into account who they're playing maybe and stuff like that. But yeah, Cercle is still up at 72%, but the difference is only a point between those two sides. And I feel like those should be a lot closer, all those sort of numbers, but I didn't really look into how they worked it out. One side who definitely aren't going to make the top 6 are Leuven. They are very much looking like they're going to be in the bottom 4. I think they've got a 71% chance of making the bottom 4 and then a 28% chance of getting out of the bottom 4. Even though the gap's only 2 points again, so that shows you kind of how tough their schedule is. They hosted Union, couple of kind of changes, I guess. we mentioned Felice Mazu last week about how good he's been. Not Felice Mazu, Yusuf Maziz. Definitely not. If Felice is playing for Leuven, I think there'd be in a lot of trouble. I think he might rig the game. Yusuf Maziz. We raved about how good Yusuf Maziz has been recently, getting assists and goals. So obviously Oscar Garcia heard that and decided to drop him instead. But maybe some fitness issues around there. I don't know, but he starts Bruins, who I don't think he has much kind of faith in. Hamza Mendel back out of nowhere. All this talk about him going to Turkey in January, the move never materialised, and then they were saying, well, he's not going to play for us unless his head's in it. So maybe his head's back in it. I don't know. Either way, all these players were back, but it was Union who got the win here. Ross Sykes getting the first one, of course. Mr. Ross Sykes just completely unmarked at the back post to tuck in to make it 1-0. Were chances either end, like Maurice was flapping a couple of crosses, and you thought, well, maybe Leuven can take advantage of this. But I think they finished with an XG of 0.5, which I mean, it's just not great, really. Union kind of wrapped the game up with a lovely move with like 15 minutes to go. Ball out to a flicked ball pass out to Nielsen. Nielsen back across. Casper Terho smashes it in to make it 2-0. Do you guys think Leuven could have had a penalty in this one? There was a handball on Burgess. It looked like one of those ones that it's been given. It wasn't given. I'm sure there'll be conspiracy theorists on the other side of Brussels who'll be saying, "Now, hang on, how has this one not been given?" I thought it could have been. I feel like there was another kind of softer penalty and a softer handball in another game this weekend that was given. So I was quite surprised when this one wasn't given. Obviously, still don't have to score the penalty, but it's another win for Union, another defeat for Leuven, and it looks like they are kind of the only team left really with a chance of getting out of the bottom four. But I don't know if you guys see them actually having a chance of getting out of the bottom four.
Well, Leuven this weekend created nothing, so that penalty would have been a real blessing for them. And when things are kind of going against you, you don't tend to get these decisions, of course. And they didn't. I think it probably was a penalty, which makes it even more frustrating for them. But yeah, they created nothing and actually were well off the pace for most of this game. Not surprisingly, they're playing the top side at the moment, a side that, are just motoring away at a really good level. No matter who they're playing, so it was always going to be really difficult for them. But they didn't bring enough here. In some ways, it was kind of a free hit for them, of course, because nobody expected them to get anything. And actually, it turned out to be a straightforward win for Union in the end. Blessing gently rotating, resting a little bit, bearing in mind they've got a slightly busier schedule because of Europe and the cup final as well, still to come. So a bit of squad management going on there, which has been going on for quite a while at Union now, reasonably effectively for them. Blessing's been able to rotate and still get the job done. Union's fifth straight win in all competitions. They've not lost in the league since September. Which is an incredible run, which is matched by only one other side, and that is the side that are relatively hot on their tails at the moment and doing very well to maintain a stretch of consistent form that is almost as impressive, and that we probably should give them credit for when we get to the Mauves a little bit later on. And yeah, Ben mentioned Ross Sykes. He's really enjoying himself at the moment.
Yeah, I don't completely agree with Scott here with how the game panned out. Leuven actually played quite well, especially the beginning, in the opening minutes. They probably should have taken the lead there, even though that didn't result in a shot on target. But there were a few balls where they just didn't really pan out. And on the other hand, mainly Union were really of it itself themselves. They also only scored with their only 2 shots on target actually throughout the whole game, which is uncharacteristic. Also, still a little bit of doubt, but okay, I guess the lines have been. I didn't see the line, but like on Sykes' goal, if he actually was offside or not, I'm still not completely sure either on that. But nonetheless, in the end, you can still say it was a routine win. But like if the roles would have been reversed, which was not that many things had to happen for that the story would be completely different. But yeah. So, but yeah, okay. Leuven definitely could not maintain their good start, though. Of course, I can that for sure. After that goal, and Union also even got 2 other goals ruled out for offside, nonetheless as well. But okay, that was correct. That were definitely correct decisions. But yeah, so I felt a bit like Leuven. Well, they performed a little better. Maybe my expectations were lower as well, but they played a bit better than I expected them. They gave it a bit more of a fight for the beginning of the game, at least. Yeah, but for them now, they need at least one win for to not be in the relegation playoffs, and that's has to come against Club Brugge or Mechelen. Yeah, that's it. It might happen, but I fear Mechelen's win this weekend probably sealed it for them, because they definitely will still really be fighting for, regardless of the result of next weekend, or everything else should go really wrong. I don't know if there is a theoretical chance there or anything more, anyway, but most likely they will be in a fight for playoffs, for Champions playoffs. Of course, otherwise you still need to get as many points as possible, but still there is a bit of a psychological factor in not play. That's, well, it's not going to be the case. Yeah, and Union, yeah, was not really their best performance, like I mentioned, but yeah, okay. This something to no surprise. They are certain of going into the playoffs as number 1 now, but that also means that they are also certain of European football next season as the first and only team that can say that until, well, ultimately probably the cup final, but maybe before the cup final, some excess spots will already be decided. But that's a different topic. They're only, yeah, so they're in, I'll go a bit further in Scott streak as well. So like they're now 23 games unbeaten. That said, I'll keep repeating, but now I will dove a little beater as well. And 19 wins in that streak for Dwas, so that's very impressive. That one is only in the league, though, if I'm not mistaken. Though, so this time not in all competitions. Only worry could be, I haven't seen an update on it. Yeah, could be the Lazare injury as well. Well, on its own, maybe not necessarily an injury, but if it with them still being active on a lot of fronts, it's all every player. Yeah, they will need every player basically. So, yeah. But I don't know if any of you guys have already an update on that. But yeah, that might be a slight spanner in the wheels. But yeah, we'll have to see then.
Yeah, he's been kind of used off the bench recently, hasn't he? Since coming back, obviously, from the Africa Cup of Nations, where there's some amazing pictures of him like going back to where he was born and stuff like that. It was really funny. I think he's a quality player as well. So I think you're right, Yes. I think not just in terms of they need everybody, but they need players of his kind of class and quality. And I don't know, you just read out those stats of how long they've gone unbeaten. I think any other kind of league, if you told me that, I'd be like, well, that's their shoe and they're going to win it. But it's just because of what's happened the last 2 seasons with them and the playoffs, and they get close and they don't. You're like, is this kind of monkey on the back of the shoulder sort of vibe where you're like, they just need to do it in the playoffs, continue this run, and then that kind of just show that it's fine. But you just don't know. And the way, yeah, obviously Anderlecht to go. And Leuven, I think I've got like a rant ready for them, whether they go down or not. It's just, I don't know. We don't have to touch it too much now, but I think kind of I just look at the club and I look at the kind of the facilities that they've got in terms of the stadium. Financially, we've known, like, obviously that they have been pumped money into, like they make a massive loss, but they just get covered. The loss just gets covered every single time by the ownership. And it just feels like this is such a wasted opportunity. Like, over the last couple of years that they've been in the Pro League, they have not done what they have the ability to do, in my mind. Yeah. They could be doing so much better for like, just because they've got all the structure in place of what could be a very, very successfully run competitive club. From the outside looking in, it just feels like that. Like the fact that their stadium's always been trying to, that teams love using their stadium if they can't use their own for like European matches and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll save it, but it's brewing in my mind if they go down that this has been a massive wasted opportunity over the last couple of seasons for them.
I think you're right to do that, actually. Just before we move on, I think you're right to kind of raise all of those points, Ben, because the thing about Leuven, and we'll find out their yeah, where they're going to be playing the football next season very soon. But I think we would all probably agree that they are quite a mismanaged club. I would say that, in a kind of polite way, and that's bearing in mind all the resources that Ben's alluding to. So yeah, this conversation is definitely to be continued.
Yeah, I just think you look at the teams in the bottom four of those sides. To me, Leuven are the one that should easily survive. Like compared to those other three, like their own is like the other three are kind of mismanaged in like a very obvious, clear way. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like the ownership at Leuven, like they have invested and they have spent money and they've put stuff into it, and it's like, but where it's just never really. I think we used every time we do the preseason preview, I'm always like frustrated that they're not aiming. I don't feel like there's been enough ambition, but it's just with their transfer policy. I mean, we're not going to talk about that again because we talk about that every single time we talk about Leuven about how bad it is. So yeah, we'll see what happens if they stay up. They've got a lot of work to do. They really, really do. They've got to get things right because yeah. Another side, I guess we can move on to who have a big summer ahead of them are Standard Liège. They've now gone from, I think their chances of being in the relegation playoffs are 0.1%. So I think they're safe. Be another remarkable thing if they were to not beat. They were definitely given some fortunate moments in this one. Ghent did take the lead. Tarek Tissoudali, who we'll mention in a little bit because he has some things to say after this one. Bodak comes for the corner, completely misses it. Tissoudali's for some reason unmarked. He taps it in from a Gherkin's corner to make it 1-0. Gets kind of bad for Ghent in the 18th minute. Nurio brings down, I think it was Yeboah on the break. Last man, straight red card. Can't really argue with that. It's just clumsy, a bit silly from Nurio. Standard then do get a penalty, and this is the one I think I was thinking about in terms of the Burgess one and this one, because Djenepo shoots, and I think it's Gherkins again who seems to be very much involved. He kind of turns his back and it hits his kind of back elbow, back arm on his right side. It's very close, and he's kind of turned to avoid like taking the ball in his face. I just felt a little bit harsh to give it as a pen, especially if you don't give the Burgess one, which was kind of, you could talk kind of apples and pears and whatnot, similarities. Wilfred Kanga steps up to score from the spot. He's had a reasonably all right season, I guess we could say. He's scored a couple of penalties. That makes it 1-1. Obviously, Hines not happy. He's been booked at this point. It's just, he's spewing. Second half, Balikwisha comes on for Aidan O'Neill the 52nd minute. Balikwisha gets an assist in the 55th. Great to see him back and getting in amongst it. He finds Kelvin Yeboah. Nice finish. Kelvin Yeboah has 2 goals. Best season he's had for a couple of years now. Nice to see. Maybe he should join permanently in the summer and just keep the good things going. Alzate then feeds through Kawabe, and it's just everything's just going through the middle at this point, and Ghent are just completely open. Kawabe runs through and puts it in to make it 3-1. Yeboah is then the beneficiary of a Kawabe assist to make it 4-1, and this has all happened by like the 65th minute. So it's William Balikwisha comes on, and all the goals start flowing. So maybe there's something in that. I don't know. Samwas comes on for Fadiga. He then gets a fortunate goal to make it 4-2 near the end. It's just that by then the game is completely done. Standard are pretty much safe, and you could see by the celebrations at the end. Tissoudali then comes out, and I don't know the exact question he's asked, but I'm pretty sure he's asked kind of like what's going wrong at the club. And he's like, obviously the transfer policy in January, it's failed. He's like, we all want to play for competitive teams, and blah blah blah. Like tries to kind of go back on it, but it's very clear and obvious what he's saying, and it's like it's not rocket science. He's completely right. Hein then is asked about what he said, and he's like, well, I've made my feelings known about this before anyway. So they're obviously all in the same boat, and I understand it from a Tissoudali point of view, and I know that like one of the papers was like, well, he hasn't been playing very well anyway, and it's like, yeah, but he's very good when he's like with someone else. And then they did make the point that his partner is basically Laurent Depotre, who's 36 or 35, 36. So it's kind of like, it's not quite Gift Orban, Hugo Kuipers sort of what they had before. But I think it doesn't bode well for kind of team morale, does it, inside? Because if you've got people coming out and saying, well, the squad's not good enough, it's like, we're all kind of looking around and being like, well, who are you talking about then? Who's not good enough? Who are you calling out as not being good enough? And obviously losing all the strikers they didn't make wasn't good. But yeah, it's not a good look when a player's coming out and basically questioning the board, even though Scott, he's pretty much spot on.
Yeah, I don't think there are many people who disagree with him, and I was actually quite impressed that he took the question head on and was just honest about it. And I think that probably says something about the depths of frustration in that squad and in some of the players, particularly a leading player in the squad like that, to the voice that's quite interesting. On Gen, I think the second half of their season has been a complete car crash, really. We wondered what would happen. We spoke in the lead up to winter, could it go this way? Would it not be as bad as kind of we thought? But, there was rumblings about, Orban and Kuipers possibly leaving before they did. They did. They sold Fofana as well. The bank balance is looking healthier, but the league position isn't. And to go from a side that probably were certain title challengers, before the winter window opened, were doing pretty well, pretty consistent, looking good, looking like they had real quality and depth there. It's all kind of fallen away, not just because of those players, but that's obviously affected the players that are still there. They've only won 1 in 11 in all competitions since coming back from January, and that was against Eupen. So, you've got to argue, does that even really count at the moment? So there's a lot of change coming for the Buffaloes in the summer. We know Big Hein isn't going to be there. There's going to be a change. He doesn't get on with Sam Barrow, the new owner. There's obviously been, as Ben was saying, conversations in the background for a while and certain disagreements on important things. So there's change coming there. And probably rightly so on a lot of levels. On Standard, I still didn't think they were great this weekend. Again, they really did get the rub of the green for a lot of this game. There was a few gifts given their way, which they took full advantage of. Fair play to them. They probably didn't think this was necessarily going to be the 3-pointer that saw them safe. But the way Ghent have been playing recently, then it's turned out to be the one. The Scleston Samurai, Kawabe had a decent game again. 7 goals and 5 assists and 25 now for him, which doesn't sound that impressive, but he's actually been one of their best players this season, second top scorer behind Kanga, who Ben mentioned, on 8. And they need players like Kanga and Kawabe to be playing at the top of their game to give them a chance at the moment. And they'll just be kind of delighted to be able to relax a little bit now and try and plan. The reality, as we know, behind all of that is there probably isn't going to be that much changing in the summer at the club, unfortunately. But you can come back with a French sense of optimism, and that in itself sometimes can work relative wonders for you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, of course, the thing is, of course, in the club there might not be that many changes, but in the playing squads, because they have a lot of loan players, it does look likely. So it's also difficult to already look forward to next season, I suppose, in that sense. Last time Standard had scored 4 was last year against Union. So in an away game, though, so I actually do not know when that was the last time at home. But yeah, that's really... it doesn't happen a lot, so that's the first time this season, at least, that it happened. And to be honest, they were just terrible at least until the break. Afterwards, okay, difficult to say. Not that they were great, but they did take their chances. Despite the results. But yes, I also wanted to give Yebo a mention. He did well. He was decisive, but also in general seemed to play quite well. Was a bit of the standout player for them in this game, together with the aforementioned names, I suppose, already Kawabe and probably Kanga was doing all right as well, I guess. But just that's still that's sole win in for Gent indeed, as Scott mentioned, in 2024. Yeah, even with everything going on, that's still you would hope that a bit better still would be possible. But in their defense and in this specific game, it's beyond me how a blast really going towards the corner flag that accidentally hits an arm it gets turned into a penalty. It feels so unfair. I know. Letter of the law, it probably is one, but then again, indeed, you sometimes see letter of the law given and sometimes not. So there's still no consequence in these things. So yeah, that's that yeah, it's beyond me how these kind of things nowadays are penalties. The reward for that is just too much. As there was no clear goal chance taken, and I think in the beginning of everything, I think that was actually the reason for a penalty to be given, and that has gotten broader and broader. But yeah, this was clearly not one. Yeah, and yeah, for Ghent, and again as well, like, yeah, I've like circling back to something that Ben said already in his terms, like 5 minutes ago now, probably already, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be on that boat. There's a famous meme with the Vite and Louwagie as well, still on the boat, that I keep coming up. It keeps coming up every season since the sinking boat is still there, sinking ship. And but like I will dub it now here as well, the moaning boat. But that's actually also already a segue to another team that's a bit too much into this moaning boat that we will talk about really. Well, I specifically will talk about quite soon.
Before we get there, I think just to give a little bit kind of maybe of context to TC Dali's frustration, I think we probably should have like pre-injury. TC Dali is probably one of those players that gets the move as well, doesn't he? Like he's stuck around and he's now having to deal with this crap basically. But yeah, no, I think you guys are right on standard. It's like it's just like they've got all these lone players that I think Yeboah is probably the most likely one they can actually keep, because obviously it's another 777 club, unless 777 don't exist in the summer. I don't know anything, but just from kind of the rumblings around the Everton deal and stuff like that, you just don't know what's going to happen with that. And they'll probably sell Kawabe because teams will look at his stats and be like, this guy's good, and he is good. Like, I'm not saying his stats are lying, he's a good player, but he's clearly one of those ones that people probably want to come in and buy. So we'll see. They'll probably have to sell him.
Hearing that, I completely had forgotten about that. Did we just say that there would not be that much change at Standard over the summer? At some point,
a lot of change.
It will be a lot. Yes, on several aspects in the club, probably.
I think we're right in that. You know, as Joris was saying, there's going to be a big turnover in players. What isn't going to change is their overall situation. So I suppose the big question is whoever comes in, and the new players coming in, going to be any better than the current squad of the ones going out? And when you're working with the budget that they probably are at the moment, I wouldn't want to be in Fergal Harkin's shoes, because he's an incredibly likeable, genuinely really talented individual who I just feel like he's working with his hands behind his back because of the management there, really.
That was a well-needed explanation for something that's been misunderstood before here. That's happened. So thank you for that, Scott.
I think hands behind his back is kind of understated. I think he's got a blindfold as well, and he's been spun around in circles and just like having to pick a name out of a hat to kind of find players. I think, because I feel like Bodart's probably is Bodart going to become the new Leifus? Every kind of window, it's like he's going to leave, and he's just still there because he's not as good as people think he is. I don't know. Apart from at the national team, they seem to love him. It's all a bit strange, but maybe that'll give Apollo a chance. I don't know. Maybe they'll turn to the youngster. Let's go and put Joris out of his misery, or let him kind of rant about Club Brugge against Genk. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch all of this one, so apologies if I miss anything blatant, but feel free. I'm sure Joris will mention it, or Scott, one of you two will jump in. Genk did actually have a chance to take the lead in this one from the penalty spot. Tolu stepped up and Tolu put it wide. Under 10 minutes later, Club Brugge then take the lead. Ball over the top from Ferniegler finds Hugo Vetlesen. He tucks it in. I've watched it, and I feel like kind of how I felt about Slanina last year. I feel like Van der Voort has to come out and close the angle down. He just doesn't really close it down. And he moves so far to his left. He's just left such a big gap on the right-hand side. Very difficult, I find, to kind of criticize him as a goalkeeper because of how good he is anyway, and you feel like this is just one of those things he'll look back and he'll rectify that, because he's still quite young and he's usually very solid, but that is just one of those kind of things where you'd watch it and you're like, he should have done better here. It then becomes 2-0 in the 73rd minute. But before that, so I should actually mention Nordin Jaka's made a couple of really, really decent saves, actually, standing in for Simon Mignolet. Rumours, or not rumours, but kind of murmurings among the Club Brugge faithful that maybe he should be the side's number one going forward. I know, he looks a bit, I guess, because you see him and you're like, well, he's a bit more mobile than Big Simon is, or Big Simon is. He just looks more mobile, I guess. But I don't think Simon Mignolet is getting dropped anytime soon. I think when he's fit, he goes straight back into that side. I don't think he has anything to worry about at the moment. Odoi then showed that he's still sprightly, despite the age of being in his 30s. Although, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still do things like he does with his header. Really nice leap to head it into the back of the net, and then a couple of backflips as well. Genk then give away a penalty. Andreas Olsen shows Tolu how to do it and puts it in to make it 3-0. Just what Ronny Deila needed after a very, very tough week where people were questioning whether he'd even be on the bench. He was also unsure about who he was going to put in goal. That was one of those things. Was it going to be Bursic? Was it going to be Jackers? I think he's probably happy he went with Jackers in the end. He showed that he can still play at this level. Frustrating thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a bit, that it's kind of his first game for a very long time. But Joris, I know there was a lot more in this game than what I said, so please do fill the listeners in on what really happened, I guess.
Well, Genk were playing terrible and Club also, but did just about enough, I guess. Well, more than just about in the end. But basically, this was not a great game of football, from either side, despite the scoreline. Poor start from Genk. Then they do get a penalty. So I felt the wings of both Bonsuba and Oye were quite okay in the first half. Second half, well, not so much, but in the first half they were doing quite well, and I felt like the key for if Genk was going to get something out of the game was to be a bit more looking at those. So get the penalty after a foul on Bonsuba, very stupid foul from Mechelen, to be honest, as well. You would expect more from an experienced defender, I guess. But then, you can also then again give away penalties to Genk because, they're not going to do anything with them this season. Anyways, that's now 2 of their 5 penalties in the league that they scored. The only side, not surprisingly, that because this is really remarkable, that hasn't scored half of their penalties even. Also, of course, there was already a penalty story. In Europe, in the first round of Europe, that started off this disappointing campaign so far. Well, probably will stay disappointing campaign by this point, no matter how it will end. But of course, luckily there was one penalty series that they did win to get to Europe, but then they still didn't really do much with that, unfortunately. Just very disappointing. And these penalties, I'm not even that happy with them anymore to get them. So also worth mentioning. Okay, that's not jumping a bit ahead. Like the penalty gates game with Genk and Anderlecht. Also, there is definitely no replay now. So that's despite it not being in favor of my team, I think it's the right decision. I guess, in general spirit, regardless of maybe definitely there were mistakes made there by the referees and by the VAR, but I mean, unfortunately, that happens still. But just you do there's just too much disappointment in me to really say a lot more, but that the Kings' performance was disappointing, and then they were not helped. Okay, it would not have resulted, because I cannot blame. I think the result would have been the same. At least the 3 points would go to Brugge, in this case, into the club. But like that. The most blatant one is actually the third one, so the least decisive one, the penalty. You better don't run close to the ball anymore, because your hands will be moving, and then someone can head it from 20 centimeters to it, and you get a penalty. Most probably Well, okay, I might still be biased, and it's not a real good competition, but might be the most ridiculous decision I've seen all season in the Belgian league. Luckily, like I said, it really didn't matter anymore. But yeah, also that it took 5-6 minutes to look at it as well. Then it gives the feeling that like you only look 5-6 minutes for that if you feel like, okay, I'm really searching for something to give here, and I mean that's just a subjective feeling, of course, but like that just yeah, why? It's just very frustrating anyway for everyone. Even for Club Brugge players, and I guess even if they will be happy that they got it and scored, but yeah, that in the second one, yeah, okay, there's Odoi gives an elbow. Well, whether that should be a red card or not, that's already still a different discussion. But well, at least it's like a foul, and he gets. It's at the very least, it's very unfortunate that he knocked out Eluadi, who had to go down for that was on the first corner, and then yeah, Eluadi had to get some. Well, he was bleeding, so he needed to get off the pitch, and then the corner gets retaken, or the second corner goes in, and then of course it's his man Odoi there that does score the header. Despite if he would still be on the pitch in that, yeah, that's like I said, it's a different discussion, but like he probably would have scored that anyway. But should that be a second corner there? It's not discussion, but. I mean, these kind of things are, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to make too much of a deal out of it, but it's not helping the image anyway. And well, if I'm not mistaken, this was also their first goal on a corner that Genk actually conceded this season. So that is worth mentioning. From Club Brugge side, yeah, also both Vetlese and Odoi getting their first goal of the season. I agree with Ben on Vettles's goal that Van der Voort probably his positioning should be better, but I also feel like, well, there are so many other things going wrong there. Before that, like he can't really. There are all other culprits there. Yeah, Rosowski's defending there is also not great, and also already that he is the only one, and that one through ball can get you so free for goal. It was also not the only time it happened in this game. A bit later, it happened as well. Yeah, that's yeah, well, was quite shameful to see as a Genk fan, and yeah, well, in a way, Dela got away with one because I suppose because he did the negative changes again when it was 0-1 still. He started playing well, actually with no striker, or well, Van Aken was playing up top, I think, for that time being. Yeah, so that really were, and it was not that Jutkla was having a bad game either or anything. So like it was, yeah, quite. Yeah, this time it works. Let's just put it that way because of two set pieces. But yeah, still like many club fans are already feeling it. So no, they're going to do it. He's doing it again. Why didn't he learn from his mistakes? But yeah, like I said, this time it did work out for them.
One of the things I love the most about this league is how insanely competitive it is. And this result kind of underlines that, I think, as well. I mean, massive relief for Club and for Ronny Deila, particularly, I suspect, because of the pressure that had been rising on him after an awful sort of 7 to 10 day period for Club. They really, really needed this result. And I think what it just underlines is that actually this is a good team, as Ronny Deila keeps telling people, whether it's achieving what, ultimately maybe it should do with the talent that's there and the depth in that squad is maybe a separate issue. But yeah, this kind of reignites their season to a certain extent. And kind of calms things down after that really bad week going out of the cup and losing to Anderlecht in the manner that they did as well. I'm glad that Joris mentioned Ronny getting away with one this week, because I was going to ask you both whether you felt the same trick had reared its head again in those negative changes, because I absolutely think they did. And it's interesting that those changes always happen when they're in the lead in a game as well. The instinct is to protect that, which you can understand, but it's something that obviously isn't going to go away. And as Joris was saying, it did work out for them this weekend. On Genk, I agree with everything Joris said pretty much. They're still fighting for that playoff one spot. They've got Standard at home and Westerlo away in the last two games, and it's still there for them in their own hands. I kind of feel like they might have to win both of those possibly to do it. Which is, maybe important for motivational reasons. And I think Genk are a club that we're going to talk a lot about at the end of the season and in pre-season, because I think, there've been a lot of changes there over the course of the season, a lot of questions about, what may happen going into next year as well. So they're another club that, we're going to discuss a lot at length. Club have got a busy schedule still in Europe, obviously. They have the two legs against Molde coming up, but in the league they've got Leuven and St. Truden, and they will fancy their chances probably with both of those. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? A bad week, 7-10 days is actually, almost been forgotten about in some ways after that result.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it's going to be funny, isn't it? You mentioned those negative substitutions, and it's strange because you think he's managed in Club Brugge, he's managed Celtic, and you think at Celtic, why you shouldn't, because it should be sort of the same sort of mindset, shouldn't it? Like, you're going out and you're going to dominate these sides, and you should just dominate them for the 90 minutes and put goals past them. But it feels like maybe his time with Valarenga is like the actual one that he clings on to, and it's like, and I don't think he's now going to go up against Molde, who obviously he faced many times while he was there, and they were then the dominant side in Norwegian football. Obviously now it's Bodø Glimt, but it was them. So he's going to get PTSD, and he's going to start making negative substitutions because he's going to forget that he's actually managing the superior side against them.
It's a really interesting point, that actually, in those negative changes, because I've been thinking about this kind of quite a lot, because having obviously seen a lot of his Celtic side a number of years ago, quite a lot of those games in person as well, I was able to take in. The thing about Ronny Deila is this is actually quite out of character for him. So I do wonder whether this is something that's developed in his experience in Belgium, and he's been a little bit more pragmatic because of the physical nature of the game and the high dueling rate and those things. So it's a really interesting new aspect to him as a coach that hasn't been there before with other clubs in other countries. So I'm just putting it out there. I wonder whether it is a Belgian thing.
Yeah, I think we'd have to look at his standard period as well, wouldn't we? To think, but again, they were a different. Like, they were not the strongest side in each game that they went into and stuff like that. So it's kind of. But
they conceded a lot as well in the end, though. So that might already psychologically for himself, maybe somehow. He might have seen pieces of that this season again, and it got worse because of it, I fear. But
we've all been there, a football manager, where you're 2-0 up and you're like, well, the way this game works is if I don't go ultra defensive and chuck on all my defenders, I will lose 5-2 and all the goals will come past 90 minutes. So we get it. We empathise with them, clearly. Let's go to the Bossel Stadion for Antwerp against St. Truden. And guys, we were treated to the Chidera Ejuke masterclass this weekend. He was just full of himself in terms of tricks. I think we look at his kind of these new kind of player trait graph things that football were doing, and the numbers are how many they've done more than each other. I think I mentioned this before, but his touches, he's had more touches than 100% of people in the same position. Like, he's right at the top in terms of touches. Chances created, he's more than 89% of players that play in the same position as him. And it's interesting, isn't it, that for Antwerp, we'll get into the game a little more in a minute, they've gone from, I know that I've been very vocal that I thought Balikwisha was their best winger. But he's now, for me, he's the clear their third best winger in this side. It's Ejuke and then it's Ondrejka. Those are the two best wingers in terms of getting goals and output. And like, they lost Muya, who I never really rated that highly. And the difference in level between an Ejuke, Ondrejka and Muya, it's just so stark. Like, these two guys are way above the level that I think Muya would have reached or could reach. Ejuke was just in his bag the whole game, just doing all the tricks. And as the game gets better and they start to win, he's more and more. And he is Gineppo with a finish at the moment, or some assist making and creating, isn't he? He's kind of similar sort of, like, he's got that fun. And just reminds you that football's all about entertainment at the end of the day, and you want to see skillful players being skillful on the pitch, and he, for me, is that. So I thought I just had to give him a little bit of a rave because I just love watching him play in this game, and I've really enjoyed him over the time. They didn't do amazingly to start with. They just could not find a finish. Antwerp, like, they dominated in terms of chances and shots and stuff, and I thought they were very happy for St. Truden to try and play out. And I think this is the more kind of one of the more difficult times I've seen St. Truden try and play out. I think Antwerp are very much ready for them and willing to kind of get up in them. Antwerp took the lead from a penalty. Ondrejka came on at halftime for Balakwisha. He put it away. He's very much a penalty taker now, isn't he? Like, he can actually score them. So it's kind of his. They then win the ball back high up the pitch off a St. Truden kind of trying to play out. It eventually falls to Ajike, who tucks it in to make it 2-0. He then turns assist maker with some lovely skill on the right, crosses it in, and Ondrejka finishes it off for his second goal to make it 3-0. A comfortable win in the end after that second half for Antwerp. They finished with some ridiculous, like 19 shots, 10 of which were on target. St. Truden just didn't look as potent, didn't look as creative, didn't look like it could really break down Antwerp as much as they have been able to break other teams down in recent weeks. So it's good news for Antwerp. Kind of feel like that should be enough. They're in good enough form with those kind of Ondrejkas and Ajikes playing well at home that they'll probably get into playoff one. I think I can't see them losing 2 games in a row. I'm sure they just get a point to get in there. So yeah, it's the wingers sort of show at the moment in Antwerp, and it was quite fun to watch this weekend.
Yeah, Antwerp getting their just desserts eventually. I should emphasise eventually, because it took a while to make the breakthrough. But, you know, I think the 3-0 score is absolutely right in the end. You know, they did get what they deserved. I'm glad Ben mentioned Shadira Ajuke, because he's in my notes this week as I've underlined excellent, really hurt St. Truden. Yeah, he was causing them all sorts of problems. And as Ben was saying, he's been really good throughout the season, actually. He has been getting better. And a bit like Alan Minda at Circle, you know, he has pace and power, and is now producing an end product as well, and has been a real surprise, actually, quite how good he's actually been. Big shout out to that Antwerp midfield, actually. Absolutely had this entire game by the stranglehold, which is one of the reasons why St. Truden couldn't play around it or through it or really get anywhere. Yusuf and Keita just had absolutely everything locked down this weekend, and it was just, you know, a bit of a masterclass in some respects. I thought they just, you know, didn't allow St. Truden an inch at all, who were on the whole dismal because of that, because of those midfield performances. Their best player was probably the goalkeeper, Suzuki, which gives you an idea as to how busy he was this weekend, which was fairly... I don't think many expected St. Truden to go there really and get anything, largely because of Antwerp's really strong home form this season as well.
Yep, but you might want to expect them to have more than 0 shots on target. Of course, that's still really indeed a terrible stat. But yeah, well, you combined, you probably raved about half of the Antwerp squad this weekend already. But I will put one other name that I actually wanted to highlight as well, was Ilenikena. Yeah, he didn't score this time, but yeah, he was just playing really well in like just. I mean, the guy's 17, so I still can't get my head around that. Like, I'm wondering if he will still be in the league next season already, because he's really okay. He still had a relatively slow start, which is for any player normal, especially at that age. But like, he really has exploded in the last couple of months, and yeah. Not that much to mention in this game, I guess. So I'll indeed Antwerp all but certain for the playoffs. Now they have to play away at Kortrijk, though. Could be a tricky game, and then at home against Union. Yeah, that actually might already. Union is definitely already playing an 11-game playoffs there with that game combined, and that psychologically that could be an important game, not only for the playoffs, but also both teams will be facing each other in the cup final. That has also been decided now last week. So Antwerp qualified with another 3-0 win against Ostende in the end. And Union, at that time really made the crisis complete at Club Brugge. Now it's already less dramatic since the games has been played. But since we didn't mention it, Club Brugge And also not that you also hate we have a cup final and it's these ones, and Antwerp was indeed strong. They deserved more of this even out of this than just 3 goals. But on the other hand, it's a bit weird indeed. They only scored after around an hour, and true defensive shambles from Sintra, at least on 2 of the goals, and the third one was also not great overall, but definitely 2 of the 3 were giveaways, I guess. But indeed, everything else has been said.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those games for St. Julian, wasn't it? What did I want to say? Yeah, I just want to just quickly back to Duque, just kind of looking ahead to the summer. He is out of contract with CSKA Moscow in the summer, so be interesting to see if Antwerp can keep him or if he's going to get attracted by other deals. And then on Telechka, I think it's just important. Like, obviously, he's been injured for much of the season, but he's got 5 goals in 12 games. He's only started 7 of them. Like the kid's good. He's very, very good. Like, and then like 17. It is terrifying. Like, I think when I was 15, 16, we played a team, like a school game, with a guy that looked like the size of an Ekavina, and it was bloody terrifying. Like, you felt small. You felt like you were going up against a full-on grown man. Like, the kid's bullying like adults. It's so great to see. It's just ridiculous. And I think, I can't see clubs not looking at him and thinking we should put in a bid for this guy because he's clearly got something about him. He's great. He's fun to watch as well. Joris, you mentioned that it's strange that it took Antwerp about an hour to score. Anderlecht did it a lot quicker against Eupen, but then for me it's strange that they only scored 1. Hazard in the 10th minute with a lovely finish, and I was just like, I think I messaged you guys like, this could be 6 or 7. I went away to watch, I think I started watching the other game or was doing something else, came back and it was still 1-0 with 10 minutes left, and I was like, what has happened? Like, Eupen like defending really well, or just Anderlecht not scoring? And I think it was just more Anderlecht not scoring, but Eupen had shots, like they had 15 shots. They just can't score. Like, this is 6 games in a row, no goals, and it's just there's literally nothing Florian Kohfeldt can do at this point. Like, the fact that you can go to Anderlecht, have 15 shots, only concede 1 goal, and not come away with anything in the position you're in must just be so frustrating. And it's just, I just don't understand what he can do. It just couldn't be more frustrating than that. I just, couldn't believe that Anderlecht didn't score more goals. And then for Eupen to not score is quite understandable, but the frustration is then even more because, like, you just feel like at the beginning, like earlier in the season, maybe you go to this, if this was like kind of 2 or 3 months in, you could at least tell the guys like, look, we played well. We were never really going to win this game. It's not a game we thought we could win, but you've come here, you've put a performance in. But it's like, that's just not good enough anymore. Like, they are in the position they're in, and they do need to start picking up some sort of points because, I think, I don't know, they need to at least score before the end of the regular season. I think that's because should be at least the goal, shouldn't it? Like, find the back of the net, because I don't know. I think my question I was going to pose is like, do you think they'll ever score again? Until next year? Like, is this it?
Well, we posed that question last week, didn't we? Or at least Joris did. He said, will Eupen score another goal again? That's their 6th straight defeat, and they haven't scored in 7 now. So the odds on them scoring for the end of the season aren't great. I mean, their last 2 games, they've got St. Truiden at home and Standard away, and on their form, I don't fancy them for either of them, and I'm not sure I even fancy them scoring in either of those either. It's got very, very interesting, much more interesting than even I thought it was going to get. We've still got 1 game to get to, which we'll get to in a second, but at the bottom it's getting incredibly interesting because of that result in the final game we'll discuss in a minute. Eupen, not a lot more we can add to what we've been saying recently. Anderlecht probably only scored the 1, Ben, because they felt that like 1 would be enough despite their dominance because it was Eupen, and Eupen don't score goals anymore. I just want to highlight again, and I've been doing this quite a lot when I've been talking about Anderlecht recently, I think that front 3, I think Dreyer, Dolberg and Hazard, we know they've been good, but when they're on it, they're really difficult to deal with. Anderlecht as well, 5 wins in their last 6 in the league. And as I was alluding to earlier, they are the only side with anything like nearly as impressive a consistency run as Union's. They haven't lost in the league since October, which is almost as good and pretty impressive. And it's worth highlighting that because they probably haven't got the credit that they deserve for that because of the things we've been talking about in the past about them slightly overperforming at some times. And it's getting to the point now where they're getting the job done still. So I think I can let that small criticism go and really credit them with remarkable consistency of their own and keeping a real title race alive. And when you look at their 2 remaining fixtures, they've got Molenbeek and Kortrijk in their last 2 games. They surely are going to win them. And as I was saying last week, if Union drop any more points between now and then, that gap's going to get even shorter and it's going to get even more exciting. So Anderlecht fans probably feeling quite good about themselves at the moment.
Yeah, despite this really not being a good performance after all from them, somehow they could keep that clean sheet. And yeah, especially, I guess if it would have been on any other side than Eupen, then maybe it would have not been the case as well already. And they got lucky once as well with a shot going through against the bar. Well defended initially, I guess, but then the ball could have gone anywhere and it landed on the bar instead of below it as well. But yeah, 5th consecutive win for Anderlecht, indeed. And for Eupen, you mentioned it. Could have been the game they scored. Could have been the one that got away. but yeah, either way. But now they're also officially condemned to relegation playoffs as well. And they might, I wouldn't be surprised if they even go into it in the last spots. Not that matters that much. I suppose probably maybe if they're level at points at the end of these playoffs, but they still will have a shout most likely to get out. But yeah, they really do need to start scoring goals, otherwise it's not going to be possible. And obviously, not much to add here. Definitely, Anderlecht indeed will be happy with what they're doing, and if they indeed, still hypothetically speaking, if they win both those games and Union drop some points, then the gap will only be 1 game, of course, in those playoffs as well. So that's well done to them anyway. But everything needs to be played, of course, especially in the Belgian league, which is all its surprises everywhere, except Eupen scoring.
No, exactly. What they've got, those 2, like Centurion and obviously Standard, don't really have anything to play for. So it's like these 2 are the perfect teams to play. But how often do we see teams that don't have anything to play for just relax and start playing some lovely football? And Centurion played lovely football, and they'll just keep playing lovely football. It's like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I think the last person to score was Brandon Bailly for Eupen. I don't know how many goals he's got this season. Was that his only one? His only goal. So I guess that kind of sums it up. I think, I don't know. I think I put a fork in them last weekend, and I'm keeping it in there.
He's twisting it. He's twisting it.
Twisting the pasta around. One side that the fork was hovering. The fork was definitely hovering over Kortrijk, but they welcome Molenbeek, and Molenbeek love to lose to teams in the bottom 4. Or the bottom 2, I guess you can say. They lost to Eupen in January. They lost to Kortrijk this weekend. Absolute gift of a first goal, just awful defending from Molenbeek. Lets Isaac Davies just pounce on it to make it 1-0. However, Pinard then decided that he was going to give the gift back. Just absolute clanger from a corner. He's not even under much pressure. He just needs to catch the ball, drops it on the floor. Birlon is there to put it into the back of the net. Where would they be without him? Probably still losing games like they are. Kortrijk then take the lead in the second half just after the hour mark. Foul on Kadjli on the edge of the box. He puts it to the same side that Deforney's on, but it's so well struck, the free kick. It goes into the back of the net. Deforney did actually make a couple of decent saves once again in this game to keep Molenbeek in it. Literally 2 minutes after Kadjli scores his first goal of the game, Molenbeek do get themselves level. Jeffren Adelaide, who doesn't score many, he doesn't assist many, but he's still actually quite a good player, despite being a kind of attacking midfielder. He's just, maybe a little bit El Canusi in the sense that he's kind of creating before the chance is created, like the kind of assist, but they don't score, so you don't really get the pre-assist if there's no assist. He smashes in to make it 2-2. Courtois then get a penalty, which I thought was really soft and slightly weird. Especially like we've had some weird penalties given this weekend. Adaramola, on loan from Crystal Palace, obviously, he brings down Tsunoda. Brings down is probably a little bit generous. It's like a little bit of a tussle. He just grab him, but Tsunoda's very willing to go down. Takes an age for this one to get given. It finally does. Kadri steps up, started run up. He puts it into the back of the net to make it 3-2. And that is how this one finishes. Molenbeek can't get another goal. You can tell neither side great defensively in this one. It was, I think, Scott, you said to us that I'm going to switch over from the Anderlecht game for the Goal Fest, and you were right, which is always a good thing. But yeah, massive win for Courtois. Brings the gap to Molenbeek to within 2 points. Brings them level on points with Eupen. They're the only side in the bottom four to have won 2 games in their last 5. They've lost the games in between, but they've at least picked up those 6 points. It just makes it all that little bit more interesting, doesn't it, going into those relegation playoffs?
Yeah, well, Kortrijk's win means escape is still possible. And as Ben was saying last week, I think we all probably agreed that, maybe we should poke the fork in because we felt it was probably over. But, there you go. And fair play to Freyr Alexanderson. I actually thought that Kortrijk were really, really positive this weekend in a way that, they haven't been arguably since maybe the first game under Alexanderson, where there was a freedom to the way that they were playing. And you just felt like they'd been told, go out there and fight for your lives, which is actually what they did. Made some mistakes, obviously, which hurt them a little bit, but managed to get the points, and it's massive for them. Kadri was absolutely brilliant, and he's been such an important player for them, who arguably has underachieved really the levels that I think he probably could set this season, and a lot of that's to do with the side he's playing in, obviously, in the circumstances. But what a massive weekend he had, and arguably the biggest factor in them getting this result over the line as well. Isaac Davies having another good game. He's been good for Kortrijk for a while. Really enjoying his time in Belgium, actually. He was talking just this week about, how much he's enjoying playing for the club and life in Belgium generally. So I think he would be open to staying if possible. That might have something be impacted on what their final fate is. On Molenbeek, winless in 11. They've lost 8 of those. Just kind of masters of their own downfall a lot of the time. They've got their last 2 games. They've got Anderlecht at home and Cercle away. Difficult to see anything for them there, to be honest. And I'm at the moment just looking at all of this relegation battle, and the big question for me is, can Eupen or Kortrijk get one more win from somewhere that just might mean that they make that playoff spot and beat the automatic drop to give themselves a chance? That's the big unknown at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'll leave the caveat of that the game against Anderlecht being at home and being a derby. They also gave Union a fight when they came. Of course, they were not in as bad of a shape as they are at the moment, of course, at that time. But nonetheless, that was a surprise on its own. But yeah, they're definitely not looking great for them. They're now the worst defense in the league with 60 goals that they conceded, which is more than 2 a game. So that's never a good sign. Obviously, you make it difficult for yourself. Well, if I'm not mistaken, a few weeks ago I also mentioned that they had like the most penalties against them. I believe it was with them. That, of course, influences that stat as well. And yeah, now indeed, like Scott mentioned, within 1 game of being dead bottom of the league, and well, also need to mention something positive. Well, positive or negative, I don't know, but what a dying second miss from Mboop that was, though. That could have completely, changed the fate again. Like I've mentioned, used that phrase too often here, but in this episode. But yeah, that could have completely changed the momentum, even if it would not have gotten them a win, of course, still. But yeah, they would go positively out of the game instead of rather than negatively. And Kortrijk would just, of course, not be as close as they are at the moment. for them. On Kortrijk, Molenbeek already does have the worst defense, and Kortrijk, even if they might stay bottom, we'll see how it all pans out. But they might not end the league with the worst attack or defense, which is already a surprise. Even if they might still be bottom, so the distribution was not great for them probably, but yeah. But that they're also still, and that's not surprising in this in the situation that they're in. Despite the win, they also are the team that most often throws away a lead. And also in this game, they threw it away twice, and almost thrice even. So that's luckily for them, it did not happen, and they will need to change that. But if Molenbeek indeed are losing against those bottom sides and like to do that's not a good sign for those playoffs, of course. So not a good omen. So I'm future looking grim more for them than for Kortrijk at the moment, I would say, despite them still being ahead.
I'm going to be super boring, and I'm going to say that nothing is going to change in the bottom four now. I think that's it. I think it's set. I don't think anyone picks up any more points. I think that's it. I think it's done. I think Molenbeek are playing the playoff, and Erpen technically have the easier run in, but they're rubbish and they can't score. It doesn't matter. They'll concede and they won't score. Of course, I think their fixtures are just too tough. Molenbeek aren't very good either. Maybe because it's a derby against Anderlecht, but I don't know. They can't beat the rubbish teams. The players have been questioned about their commitment to the cause anyway. Are they going to care about a derby game? I don't know. If you were, we'll segue on to the Challenger in a second. But if you were coming out of the Challenger, which of those three teams do you reckon you'd want to face the most? Out of Kortrijk, Erpen, or Molenbeek?
Oh, now there's an interesting question. I think probably Molenbeek at the moment, based on form and the way individual players are playing. I think they're the side that most of the CPL sides, I think, would really fancy their chances against.
Yeah, well, I will be boring and say definitely not Kortrijk out of those three. And then between the two others, I don't think they would mind any of them if they keep in the form that they are in, of course. On the other hand, admittedly, I'm not super convinced with the Challenger Pro League on the whole of the level of the top teams there. The bottom team the third bottom team in the playoffs still will have a chance, I think. Except if one of those sides in the Challenger Pro League actually picks up a really good playoff form and then really goes into it convincingly. But at the moment it looks very even, which is good for the league, of course, but down there. But we'll talk about that a bit more really soon. But that might mean that the participant in that playoff might not be in outstanding form either. There's obviously a good one, otherwise they would not make that. But but if I still need to take one of the two, currently Erpen, I guess. But I've also saw something now very randomly that Bartosz Białek still is playing for them, and that his injury really hampered Erpen maybe more than we ever thought of a player that I don't think he made a minute in the end in the season, maybe in the first game or so. I think he already got off before that. But that just as a factor for them that's really proven more important than anyone could have foreseen at that time, I guess. This without knowing the level he has, even, of course, but assuming the way it's going for them at the moment.
So he got injured pre-season. He's not still there. Do you know what I mean? He can't. Weird.
Probably
whatever.
Not. No, I would.
No, you know what I mean?
But I would have thought that his contract even would have been in January. They would have completely finished that. But I saw if the information on Transfermarkt is still correct, and of course we also know Erpen is not the best on this kind of announcements, but I guess a player leaving they still would announce. He still is under contract with them, but yeah,
he's somewhere in East
no long
Belgium.
contract.
He's somewhere.
Yeah, not even sure about that, I guess, but maybe that's needed for legal, well, for tax reasons. I don't know, but
maybe.
But,
I think you made a good point about him, actually, because I was going to say, I don't know if you guys saw that there was a man on the Kortrijk bench, Thierry Ambrose was back, who only managed one game before he got injured. So he played more than Bialik, but good to see him kind of back amongst the substitutes at least. I think if I was a challenger team, I'd probably want to play Erpen. I think just someone like Biron would kind of scare me a little bit more because I feel like they've just got that goal scorer in there that can find back in there. And Deforney can have like weird, really, really good games where he can like save penalties and do stuff like that. So yeah, I just feel like Molenbeek do have some players that need to perform. But like you said, Joris, because everyone's kind of stuttering to the end of the challenger, it feels like that's not a team you'd probably want to face. Before we go, or should we? Let's go to the challenger actually. Then we'll come back for our questions. Scott, why don't you give us a quick rundown of the challenger, and then we'll jump to the questions.
Yeah, well, it's been absolutely wild in the Challenger Pro League for weeks now. Only 7 points separating the top six now. So if you haven't been following this, then you can start now and jump into the excitement there. The results this weekend: Club Next beat Young Genk 2-1 to do the double for the Bruges sides over the Genkies. Zulte Waregem dropped points against SL16, that finished 1 each. Liers won 3-1 against Frank Baran. Denza won 4-1 against Anderlecht Futures. Lommel likewise won 4-1 against RFC Liège. Dender and Beerschot finished 1 each. Sarang got a win, everybody. Sarang won 3-0 against Patro Eisden in one of the surprises of the weekend. And Beveren, in another surprise, managed to throw away a 2-goal lead against Oostend in the last half hour to lose 3-2. So in terms of how things are looking, Denza have gone top. And are now undefeated in 8, 5 wins and 2 draws in there. Beerschot dropping points means they drop down to second. Lommel are up to third after their convincing win. And Zulte, who surprisingly dropped points against SL16, they've dropped down to fourth now. And their form is kind of all over the place, actually. You don't know what's happening with them just now. Beveren, who I mentioned, have dropped down to 8th. And after this weekend's defeat, that's probably their automatic promotion hopes finally gone. They are now going to be crossing their fingers and toes that they can do something and reach the playoffs. And the magic can happen that way. Their inconsistencies just come back to plague them again. Liers, as I was saying, first win for their new T1, Sven Vandenbroek as well. They're probably going to need another win, possibly, because although they're outside of the drop zone at the moment, they're just above it, which leaves, of course, Sarang and SL16, who both had decent results this weekend, remaining in the drop zone.
Yeah, massive win for Lies with that Salang win. Huge. Gudrun Koya Lipu, Central African Republic international, now top scorer after those couple of goals for Beveren, so it's nice to see. He probably would have switched it around for 3 points instead. It feels, doesn't it, that of all the sides that you're looking at in this league at the moment, Denza seem to be the one that are actually kind of putting anything together. Like they've at least... When you look at the little ticks and crosses and dashes for draws and stuff, there's no crosses for the defeats and stuff like that. So they're actually putting some stuff together. Beers got 1 win in 5, I think it is now. So it's the Dirk Kuyt effect finally taking its shape. Like he's finally having an impact on the side. It's still an absolute mess down there, isn't it, at the moment? Apart from Denza, so they look the most likely, I guess, to join us next season for definite. And then I think it's just going to be a scrap, isn't it, for that second spot to see who gets there. And then we enjoy the playoffs and the carnage that will be whoever comes out of that. battered and bruised to then face whoever finishes third bottom in the Pro League. Before we go, let's quickly go over some questions that we have. Thanks, as always, for getting in touch with us. We really do enjoy answering these. First one from Jack Hacken. Maybe he's doing some recruitment for Feyenoord. Who knows? He says, with Feyenoord likely having another big sale of players in the summer, the loss of key players like Jimenez, Timber, Vifa, Gertrude, Minter and Hartmann. So there's quite a few players there. Which players from the league would you tip as possible replacements of good quality for these players? Obviously, guys, we don't want to see Belgian Pro League players leave to the Eredivisie. It's not something we want to happen. But obviously, Feyenoord, big club, big pool, have dealt in Belgium in the past. Which player do you think has that level to go and kind of play and compete for the title in the Netherlands?
Well, there is one player who has already played in the Netherlands with Erenveen for a little while, who we have been raving about a lot in this episode, in Shadira Ajuke. You know, Ben highlighted as well his contract situation earlier, even better. So it's all out there for you, everybody. We don't want him to go, but, you know, he's producing the goods at the moment and he probably isn't going to cost the earth either. So there's one recruitment suggestion for Feyenoord. And Rotterdam's actually a very nice city, depending on where you stay, of course. But then so's Antwerp.
Yeah, they're very comparable, obviously, in city-wise. But yes, exactly my pick. That based on what we said here, and I was just having a quick search as well. I was like, yeah, well, no, actually, look no further. I think.
Are we all throwing our weight behind Shadira? My God, that's almost a ringing endorsement.
Especially the fact that he already has shown it in the league as well. There, of course, plays a role. Although we know from other Yarimchuks that does not always mean that it works at a different club. But yeah, sorry for throwing that name there. I don't mean to be rude to you, Roman, but
I don't think he's listening.
Yeah, no, or any club fans that would feel offended. I'm sorry. It was just an example that just came now. But yeah, that's really the top of mind. I would indeed talk about him. Well, there are other players that might be good, but I don't think they would be affordable for Feyenoord. And otherwise, yeah. I'll stick for Ejuke at the moment as well, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if they sell Jimenez and a couple of those guys, they'll probably make a fair amount of money from them. I could see them go for someone like a Minder, just to kind of replace like those, kind of like Minter obviously playing out wide and kind of like Ejuke.
It would be fun if they would. It would be fun if they would get Dinky, so we have the combination back together.
Poor Kevin. He's finally been the main goal scorer. Now he's got to go and take long throw-ins for Ueda and kind of play them off for him. But that's what I mean.
Yeah,
they've shot
he hasn't
there
lit
before.
The legal fire yet, of course, but himself Ueda. But yeah,
maybe Le Martial. They could look at trying to get him off Monaco. That's definitely a player they could be interested. Which segues nicely into the next question, which. Yeah, sorry, Joris. I think this might be your answer. We'll just pick one each. This one comes from the corner flag. Apologies if we've misunderstood this. We've been having a debate as into kind of the like, parameters of the question. Top 3 players currently on loan to a Pro League team that you'd expect back next season. I presume you mean you'd expect back in the Pro League next season. So I guess we'll answer it like that. We'll go for one each. Scott went first on the last one, so Joris, you can go first on this one.
Actually, okay. Unfortunately, I only need to name one pick. Okay, I'll take one pick, and if my other picks are not mentioned by you guys, I will maybe drop them somehow in, sneak them in. But he's already been mentioned before, and I would not be surprised if Isaac Davis would be staying in the league. Regardless, even if Kortrijk are staying in the league, I know there's of course the same owner with Cardiff still, so it would be most likely again at Kortrijk. But if they wouldn't stay in the league themselves, I could see him at another Belgian club, mid-table ish, I guess. Not that I need to go into the specifics there, but yeah, especially I didn't even know or hear that, but especially since Scott also we had written him down, but especially since Scott also mentioned that he's actually came out and that he's enjoying life in Belgium, it would not really be a surprise either. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for my money's worth, and I've been thinking about this a lot today actually when I was looking at all of the loan players in Belgium at the moment, one to keep an eye on, and we don't know which way this is going to go, but it's a very interesting one regardless, is Ugo Sike at Cercle. There's a good chance, obviously, he is going to go back to Germany in the summer, but whether he comes back to Belgium, either to Cercle or to somebody else, is going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on because obviously he's a massive talent and I think he's really made the most of coming back to Belgium for a period to play regularly again. So keep an eye on his destination.
Yeah, I think I really have an answer for this one. I was trying to think of who could it be? I'm just going to punt on one, I guess. Maybe Slanina as a goalkeeper. Like a team could need a goalkeeper, and they could go for him. I don't think he's been incredible, but they may be like, well, he's had a year in the league. There may be teams without a goalkeeper that need that more, I guess, cheaper option because I guess Chelsea will be willing to pay some of the wages. Like Mechelen might need a goalkeeper, although I think they need to go for someone else that we may talk about another time. But it depends if he's available or not. We'll see. So yeah, maybe Slanina, but I think a couple of the guys you said have been great. Joris,
And
you
I
said you
will
had a couple
not
of other names.
exactly. I won't be even subtle about it. Just try to sneak it in. I know, or at least I believe, Galatasaray has mentioned that they want to keep him from next season. But by Ram from Westerlo, I would not be surprised if he would stay. Not necessarily at Westerlo. Okay, of course, there's also their obvious ties to at least Turkey, but nonetheless, maybe somewhere else in the league as well, or on loan or being bought. I've got no clue. On a few other all of my shouts are quite left field. To be honest, I think somehow more towards the bottom. But again, at Kortrijk, is it Fuji, the Japanese defender that they got on loan? That's now injured, of course, but he has played quite well. I would not be surprised. And at Molenbeek, surprisingly, maybe as well. I'm not completely convinced of him, but that's why he's also coming here and here. But like Carlos Alberto has shown a few goals, I guess, at least in some few glimpses. But is it enough to really stay in the league? Well, maybe not, but at least I'll give him a little shout here.
Yeah, I was just trying to get up a list of players that are on loan to see. Oh, we mentioned Kelvin Yeboah. Maybe he'll come back. I don't know. There's a couple, maybe. Who else did I just see randomly mentioned there? Owen Windal could potentially, I don't know, financially if they can afford him. Gaston Avia's transfer's not gone well at all, so they definitely won that quite easily. That's the less spoken about Ajax's terrible transfer summer, the better. If that was a podcast, you could probably speak about all evening. Next question from Yolan, who actually did a big thread on Genk, so definitely check it out. I'll read out your actual app because there's probably thousands of Yolans on Twitter. It's at Yolan 2311200. Definitely check it out. It's a really interesting thread. He said, "What do you think has gone wrong at the likes of Ghent and Genk this season?" I think we're probably all in agreement with this one, but go away, far away, guys.
Well, Joris might want to say a little bit more about this, but I think the short answer, and he said it earlier on today, actually, when we were having a laugh about this very question, don't sell all of your players at the same time, times two.
Yeah, basically, that. It's a bit of a circle jerk like this, I guess. It's my own words going towards me, but and then them. But yeah, no, I don't think there's much more to it. Okay, I can add a little more. Of course, it's not necessarily only one transfer window in Genk. It's been like the last year or so. Yeah, the loss of players, of important players, has been spread around a bit, but the replacements are either not good enough or not good enough yet. More replacements for the future that can't bring the same value. Yeah, that's I'm already actually quite scared for next season because definitely Alcanus will be leaving, and Van der Voort will be gone as well, of course. Okay, they should have a good replacement for already, but nonetheless, and there will be the last few players that haven't been sold from the start of last season basically will be sold, I guess. So it's a bit more spread around maybe than in Ghent, but not in one transfer window. Although even this transfer window, Genk also lost three key players, of course. That, or at least two key players and the three in the starting 11 at least. And that's he really hampers the form now. For Genk, a bit more specifically, maybe then that I can be a bit more. Of course, it has also been a disappointing season before the window already. I guess you can say with I guess really the trauma of the title loss, and then the summer going quite bad as well with the European adventures not going as planned. Also bringing in less cash than planned in total, the whole European adventure. So they had to sell a little in January. Maybe one or two of other players would not have been sold at that time otherwise. And now there's a lot of quality loss at the moment, and I hope some of the youngsters can actually develop. Youngsters already in the squad at the moment, but also maybe for players from Young Genk that can get into the fold next season already into the squad and playing. But you can't put too much pressure on those guys either. So I'm curious about how Genk will look like next season already. And for Gent, there is even more obviously. Sudali said it all, I guess, even for us.
Yeah, I think like on Ghent as well. I don't want to do this comparison, but I will do it because like it was always obvious that the players that they sold were going to leave either this season or next season, and this is what clubs like Union do so well: is they know these players are going to leave, so they've already bought the replacement in the window before that they've left, so that like they can sell these players, like they can sell Dante Van Zier in January, but they've already got someone in mind already to kind of line up and stuff like that. So that's where Ghent messed up, is that they just sold all these players and they had no one to replace them. So they went out and spent loads of money. They spent loads of money on a kid who's basically not going to be fit because he's not played football for months or weeks at that point. So it's just poor kind of future planning, which is like you've got to, like, you can't really not do that in this league at the moment unless you're like very confident of your youth players coming through and stuff like that, which I think that's where they differ as well, because I think Genk have kind of done that a little bit more. Like they've bought some, like even this, they bought like Bonsu Bar, they bought Kenan Kuba, they bought Anwar Ait El Hajj. Like they've bought some of these younger players that could come good later on, like you said, Joris, that maybe not be good enough now. And Union have had kind of that luxury of that they put these players in when they're just about to be good enough to be good, whereas you like Genk really haven't had that opportunity because obviously Onuachu left so late on and stuff like that. It's like it's all kind of dependent, but I think that's where Genk, in my mind, are in a little bit of a better position than Ghent, because Ghent were just like, yeah, we'll take all the money, and then it's just a mess.
I will add one more specific point. But a more specific point for both sides, it counts like they didn't get a good striker replacement. Anyway, so
100%. Speaking of Union, last question, long-time listener Matchday Ball. How do you expect the remaining Belgian teams in Europe to do? Can we expect, I think, a successful year for Belgian teams or a loss of coefficient points?
I expect Club Brugge to get past Molde. Absolutely no excuses not to, because it is probably the best possible draw they could have got, actually. And, you know, with Ronnie Dyler's experience there back at home, then, you know, no strangers at all. So no excuses for them. Obviously, Union have the harder tie, but equally that could go either way. But they're such a fearless side that I'm quite hopeful that they could, you know, go a stage further. Either way, I think from a coefficient point of view, it's generally going to be another strong season, which we know is increasingly important.
Yeah, I think it's already, even if they would go out with both would go out with all losses, I think it already would still be a really good season for the coefficients points ranking anyway. So that I'm not too worried about. Yeah, and I think I agree. Fenerbahce, on the other, is of course really a tough tie. They really have not lost many games themselves either, although they just quite recently got out last week. I think it was, yes, got quite convincingly beaten in the cup, but in the league, they have only lost one game. So that they're really on a good form as well. So probably one of the worst teams Union could have gotten. But maybe it's also better like this in a way. I think now there's two teams that have a fighting chance. If the reverse tie, okay, of course there were other options, but let's imagine it would be the reverse, and I'm sure even if it were options. For both sides. But if Club Brugge would have to play Fenerbahce, I would be less confident. Okay, and I would be more confident in the Union beating Molde. But now it's more both sides 50-50, I guess, and like that could turn out good or bad, but we'll see.
Yeah, I remember Nordic Footy podcast guys were not too impressed with Ronny Deila during his time in Norway. They were not surprised when he was kicked out of Oslo. I think. Yeah, I agree with Joris. It's really weird. Like you'd be more confident in Union just because what they do. Whereas Club, I feel like Club, like they've got such a good shot at going far in this tournament. But I'm not writing Union off. I think Turkish football has it's starting to have a bit more of a renaissance. It's starting to come back as a stronger league than it has been in the past, which I think is great for kind of European football because the atmosphere there is incredible. So I think it's going to be a tough time, but I can see them doing it. I'm never going to write that team off. I write them off too many times and they prove me wrong. But I think that's probably it for this week. It's been a monster one. Lots to get through. Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
It has. And here's to more monsters. Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah, no, I don't want any monsters.
The poor editing that will have to be done. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening. If you do enjoy it, please leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. Again, we'll probably run another question segment maybe in 2 weeks just before the final game of the season, the regular season, that is. But yeah, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.